Welcome all to Spotlight Sessions, where we shine a light on incredible organizations and incredible people that are doing great work. I am your host, Josh Basil. I'm a C4-5 quadriplegic, paralyzed below my shoulders. I'm a disability rights advocate and attorney, and every day I love to fight to break down barriers to access and inclusion for persons with disabilities. Today we are joined by Alycia Anderson of Alycia Anderson LLC. I'm excited to have you on. Welcome, Alycia.
Thanks for having me today, Josh. I'm excited to be here. Great way to end the year.
Yeah, it is. So, Alycia, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I am a motivational speaker. I'm a published writer, a corporate diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility consultant. I hold a European master's degree in adapted physical activity, where I focused on the benefits, practices, and principles of inclusion. I'm a wheelchair tennis player. I'm a cyclist. I am an identical twin to an able-bodied sister. I'm also a wheelchair user. I was born with a disability called sacral agenesis. And so I live my life from a wheelchair. And I'm just on this journey to help companies and organizations understand the true benefits inherent to building diverse and inclusive workplaces and society. I'm just trying to right size obstacles and open up possibilities for others that might follow me.
So is all of your work consulting work?
So consulting, yes. The heavy lift of my work right now is speaking. I am traveling a lot, either in person or virtual, depending on the situation, but I'm doing a lot of speaking to big businesses about inclusion of people with disabilities at work. I'm all about let's get to work and make some money.
I love it. No, these are such important conversations for businesses to have. And so like when a business does approach you to like give a talk, like who do you speak with within these companies?
I'm speaking with either at, companies. My most recent talks, I just spoke at Abercrombie and Fitch, Chico State, Arizona University, and I'm speaking to either DE&I, diversity, equity, inclusion groups, and or company all hands events. That's a lot of it. I'm, talking a lot about my journey in the workplace. I've always worked. Started off as the first waitress in a wheelchair ever. Put myself through college, all the way up to vice president of sales at a technology startup. So I talk through my stories and my path through gaining employment and climbing the ladder, and how we can really look at employment of people with disabilities within a workplace and in education.
I love that. So what do you think? What can persons with disabilities contribute to businesses? How do you usually kind of explain that or kind of promote that message of what persons with disabilities can really contribute?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Is the question, what can people with disabilities contribute?
Yes,
Okay.
I think that's the simplicity. You said it a lot better than me.
We need to start looking at disability as something that we can leverage in the workplace, and not only disability, but our diversity. So instead of businesses looking at disability and inclusion in the workplace as something that is potentially an afterthought or this big thing that we have to overcome to achieve, if we start looking at our differences as valuable attributes that can bring and enrich the workplace, that's where we really need to start. So what people with disabilities can bring to the workplace is their qualities and the things that they have learned to leverage to overcome. When we're overcoming something, we become better at something else. An example of that is my last employer, before I went out on my own with my own business. He didn't know that I was coming to the interview in a wheelchair. I used to, there's so many stigmas in the workplace of hiring somebody with a disability. Can they physically, do the job? What accommodations am I going to have to make? And all of these things. And so for me, it's always been this thing that I've had to overcome first and then get to my qualifications and be hired and all of those things. And this last employer hired me because he knew that I had to be a good planner. He said specifically, I looked at your qualifications and your education and all of these things, but what I also knew is you have to be a very proficient planner. You need to plan for accessibility, Ubers, hotels, meetings in corporate offices and different environments. And he knew that like strategy of planning and that expertise that comes along with my disability would translate to my work. And if employers started to look at disability specifically, and people with disabilities, look within ourselves. What do we have? What have we learned that we can leverage in the workplace as an attribute, and start shifting that from that mindset from limitation to attributes? I think that's really where we need to begin in the workplace. So I talk a lot about our differences being sort of those superpowers that make you qualified over someone else because you're more proficient in one way or the other.
That's so interesting how you put that, because it's so true. Persons with disabilities are natural problem solvers. Every single day we have to overcome barriers that most people don't even have to think about. As simple as, even for me, I don't have use of my arms, and every day I have to brush my teeth. Every day I have to figure out through caregiving schedules, medical supplies, or even getting in and out of my house or getting in and out of a building. It can be from the simplest little things to really, really complex things of navigating the Medicaid system or Social Security, or you name it. There's different ways that I feel like our brains are being rewired to really overcome barriers, and especially with creativity, which is it's a very interesting thing that could be added to the workforce, or to any business that wants to really move into the future.
Yeah, and I find when you start to have those conversations and we shift perspectives and conversations in that light, there's light bulbs that go off. When I'm speaking about these things, you can see that these organizations and leadership starts to really shift, like, oh, and it's kind of like shifting off that ableism in our minds and our way of thinking about disability, that, we would be so much better if we were able-bodied, or if we had the ability to do X instead of the way that we're doing it now. And if we shift that off and turn it into something that differentiates us, it's pretty powerful. And to encourage organizations to start to think in that light really starts to open up other conversations and other ways of thinking in the workplace, which I think is really important. So,
and earlier you were talking about what persons with disabilities or workers with disabilities can bring to a business, and it's really those unique perspectives that you were diving into. If everybody thinks the same, then that's going to be a very stagnant kind of business operation. But with many different perspectives, you have many more conversations and many more ability to grow as a business.
And I'm sorry, and just another thought is, the other thing that people with disabilities can bring to organizations is the know-how to navigate this stuff. We're having all these diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility conversations in the workplace, and it's like, how do we know how to start navigating this stuff? And it's like, well, hire people with disabilities, hire an expert that knows and can help navigate those conversations, add them to your board, start to include them in executive conversations, because it starts with leadership guiding. And sometimes people don't know what they don't know. And we need experts with disabilities hired to come in and be the expert in that area within the organization as well. So that's another huge piece that people with disabilities can bring to the workplace, for sure.
And once you bring it into that business, it's almost like you're planting all these seeds that grow within the business, and it almost becomes a part of the DNA or the culture. And if you can start doing that at every level of the business, you're going to see some huge changes. And
I love that analogy, the seed growing. I talk a lot about inclusion being this, like, it's not this check off the box thing. It's an ongoing practice, and it's super uncomfortable most of the time, and it's hard work, and it's something that we do together. It isn't something that I'm going to deliver on my own and we're going to be good to go. And it isn't something that an organization is going to hand me and it's going to be perfect. It's this collaboration that is uncomfortable a lot of the time for everyone. But as we practice these things in a work environment, as we plant the seed, if I can use your analogy, it starts to grow and it becomes more natural. And just like anything that we practice over time, we don't think about it eventually. It just is, it's embedded in our processes and in the way that we think. And eventually these conversations and finding pathways forward aren't as difficult as they might seem initially.
The uncomfort. I feel like that's a really important point to explore because it's not a bad thing. So if you're feeling uncomfortable about talking about disability, it doesn't mean you're a bad person or that you don't care. It just means it's just these conversations haven't really had an opportunity to like really dive deeper into. And because of that, we're all exploring a new area of insight within businesses. And that exploration, yes, it might be uncomfortable, but once you get past that initial uncomfort, I really do believe that businesses have just so much growth to be had after that.
Totally. I don't think we can achieve anything without getting a little bit uncomfortable and making mistakes and learning from those mistakes and processes. And, like when I was a waitress in a wheelchair, like that wasn't a comfortable conversation to have to get hired. It wasn't comfortable at first to roll my wheelchair out with a tray of margaritas on my lap and go to tables and have kids, mommy, why is my waitress like kneeling, and the shushing but like offering these opportunities to show society that people with disabilities can actually do any type of job, even the ones that no one ever thought we could do, if we're willing to adapt and have the conversations. And takes forward thinking companies, and it also takes somebody with a disability willing to like go after it and find that collaboration and where it's going to work in that individual situation. And when you do that, society starts seeing and believing in possible rather than the impossible, which is, the shift that we need to make. And when we look at people with disabilities, we need to think possible before we're thinking, oh, they can't, there's no way, absolutely not. And so it's just that shift of mindset and practicing and getting through those uncomfortable moments so we can learn.
And it really is a new language in many ways. So like I like to call it speaking disability. And it's like whenever you're starting to learn a new language, there's a learning curve, right? Like it's not like you can flip a switch and you just get it right away. You got to practice at it, but over time you get really good at it, and then you can start having really fluent conversations. And that's I feel like that's what you do for businesses coming in as a consultant. You help kind of teach them and speak disability a little bit
Yeah.
more clearly.
Yeah. And what I do with my business is I'm not the person that is check off the box. We need to do A, B, C, D, and everything's going to be accessible. What I'm talking about, my platform is called Heart of Inclusion, and it is about human to human, really making those connections as human beings so we care about then getting to this is how it works, this is what we need to do, this is what we need to offer. Because what I find as somebody with a disability in a professional environment and really in life is if we're not having that human to human engagement, we're looked past, we're looked over, we're looked at as like something that needs to be dealt with, rather than when you care about someone and you understand their path and you can find a way to relate in some way, you put forth that uncomfortable work, you put forth the effort, you don't want to not include another. And so I really talk to companies about that human to human conversation, how to get to know each other in a work environment so you can start to have more uncomfortable conversations and really make it a valuable environment for everyone.
That's awesome. So today, with your organization, with the work that you've done, or just anything in your life, I would love to know what's an achievement of yours that you're most proud of in your life.
So I guess my most recent achievement that I'm pretty proud of was I did a TEDx talk this year called Disabling Ableism, the Modern Pathway to Inclusion. And this was a bucket list moment. It typically is for speakers to get on that type of stage and platform that is global, where you can have reach globally. So that is probably my most recent biggest achievement that I'm most proud of. And to have the opportunity to be bold enough, honestly, to talk about ableism, something 9 people out of 10, if not 10 out of 10 in that room did not know what ableism is. And so this is just a conversation that is pretty important because it's so ingrained in our society about the way that we think about disability. We don't recognize ableism is there, which is when we're favoring an able-bodied over somebody with a disability. I talk about turning that off, disabling it, flipping that switch off in our minds so we can start believing in the possibilities for everybody, and that differences are okay, and that we shouldn't favor one over the other, but we need to celebrate each other. And so to have this opportunity and share my story was a big deal for me this year. And it's really elevated my business. I've gone out on my own. I've taken the leap. I've left my VP role. And it's been a big opportunity and leverage point for me. Check it out.
If someone wanted to watch the TEDx talk, how can they find it?
It's on YouTube. They're the TEDx channel. So you just have to Google either my name, Alycia Anderson, or Disabling Ableism, the Modern Pathway to Inclusion, or Ableism. You just have to search it. It'll pop up.
That's awesome. I'm always curious. So with the TED Talks, do you have to do a lot of training with them? Is there like multiple rounds of, what's that all about?
So it was definitely multiple rounds of submitting to be accepted. And then once I was accepted, mine specifically, I had 6 weeks and go time. So no teleprompters, no notes, none of that. So it was a lot of writing. I mean, I had my outline done. I woke up in the middle of the night and I just knew that I had to write, the title was there and I knew what I had to do, and then I got accepted. And so I wrote it and practiced a lot. And I was really proud of the delivery. It was like kind of one of those moments, you're either going to rise or you're going to fall. I think I did pretty good. So it was an amazing experience. And again, it's elevated my craft, and it's given me a platform to really leverage my business and really try to help people. My goal is to really widen the pathway for those that follow me, for the next people with disabilities that are going into job interviews or trying to advance in one way or the other, and just opening perspectives a little bit more in minds to what is possible for us.
So cool. So if you had one message to just tell business owners today, what would that message be? So what would that message be surrounding kind of the disability community?
Oh, there's so many messages. My message would be disability and accessibility in the workplace. It shouldn't be an afterthought. It should be something that we're looking at as we're developing products, as we're developing planning infrastructure, and understand that accessibility within any type of product or infrastructure development, it really encourages universal design that anyone will choose. Like, for instance, texting, Siri, there's all these technologies, products that we all choose because they're more intuitive. They're the product of choice. And so when we're thinking about accessibility from a business standpoint, if we're looking at it from the development stage instead of this afterthought of, oh, we have to catch up there, you're actually developing products and services and infrastructure that is universally chosen, and it makes your products more leverageable. On top of that, The second thing is we need to understand that, again, our differences are okay. And it makes the work environment richer. It makes you more competitive as a company. I mean, all we're hearing these days is diversity, equity, inclusion. What does your company structure look like? What is and so to be including disability in that conversation, it it just allows your company environment to be more inviting and more competitive in the market today.
It's some great messages right there. If anybody wanted to find you, what is your LLC website?
AlyciaAnderson.com. Pretty, not very creative. Alycia with a Y, ALY. And then on Instagram, I'm at Alycia Speaking. LinkedIn is a good spot for me too. You just have to search my name. And yeah, I'm all over social media right now, and I would love to connect with anyone. If there's companies out there who are looking for speakers, please reach out. I would love to connect with anybody who's interested in continuing conversations.
Well, very excited for all that you're going to do into the future and continue our friendship. And thank you for being here today. And to our audience, thank you for joining us to the end. And until next time, have an incredible day.